Hello, my 7+ friends. Today, before we get started, make sure that you have your packet out and go ahead and open it up to the proportion method, which is lesson 6-1 notes. But also notice that I have this random pair of scissors off to the left side. Go ahead and grab you a pair. That way we can quickly put this foldable together. So with your packet open to this page, we are going to fold this like hot dog style. But when you fold, we're actually not going to fold all the way to the edge of the paper. You're just going to fold down to where you can still see those words, that 3 kinds of percent problems. Once you fold and crease it there. Then notice right here, about 1/3 of the way and then 2/3 of the way, that there are these like dashed lines. We are going to open just this top, and you're going to cut from the bottom all the way up to right here where it starts kind of our crease. So go ahead and cut right up there, right up here, and then push play on the video. That way we can get started. All right, so your notes should be ready to go, where you have 3 flaps so that you can see kind of all 3 sides. But before we get started, we're actually going to go to the back of this foldable. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over so that I can get started right here. And we're going to talk about kind of the proportion, and then on the other side, we're going to actually complete 3 of the problems. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so now that we have kind of our foldable put together, we're going to go ahead and get started with the actual math. So the proportion method will always start with the part over the whole, and that will equal the percent over 100. Okay, so notice because it is an equal sign and because it is our proportion, I could also have percent over 100 equals the part over the whole, but this just kind of keeps it so that you can see and kind of keep that same pattern. All right, so the part, you also will notice, like it maybe in words, but the part will also be the same as the word is. So if it says something is, that represents the part. And then if we see whole, you will also notice the word of attached with that whole. So it's kind of like is over of. That's essentially the same thing right here as the part over the whole. All right, so if you're listening to me right now, go ahead at the bottom right of your foldable currently. Go ahead and put a star right near kind of the whole of that foldable. Just a star, doesn't matter how big or how small, but I want to see who's actually listening to these notes. All right, so part over the whole equals the percent over 100. Let's go ahead and turn this foldable back over and get started on our examples. Alrighty, so once you've turned your notes back over, you should see your foldable closed, where you see the what is 85% of 120, all these numbers. But let's go ahead and open up the flap on the far left side. So this one right here, I'm just going to kind of zoom in. So when I open up my flap, I'm just going to represent it here just by a line, because I want us to be able to see kind of our problem still that we're actually working out. So 85% of 120. I'm going to go ahead and move these items up so that I have a little bit more space. So let's go ahead and start with our proportion. And I know that it's going to be the part over the whole equals the percent over 100. Now, I'm not necessarily always needing to write out that part over whole equals the percent over 100, but I like repeating it over and over for each problem, especially at first. That way I can kind of memorize that proportion without having to look back at my notes. So what is, now if you remember back on the other side, is representative of the part, because is over of, and then over here when it says of 120, I know that that's representative of the whole. And we always, the percent is always the easiest one to pick out. We know that percent always has that percent sign. So once I've identified all of the 3 missing pieces, I can kind of start filling in my proportion. So part is my unknown because it says what is. I'm trying to find that, so I'll just use like X or any sort of variable. Our percent is 85% right up there. And then I know it's always my percent over 100. And then my whole of 120, meaning 120 will go down there in the denominator. All right, once you have it set up, that's mainly the most difficult part, is just setting it up. But once you get there, all you're going to do is cross multiply, which is what we did last chapter. So 100x equals, when I multiply these two things out, I end up with 10,200. And then to get x by itself, divide both sides by that 100, and we get x is equal to 102. And then you can actually always check to to make sure that you have the correct answer by plugging this 102 in. So when I plug in this 102 right there, or actually even better, it would be right there, I would have 102 over 120. So when I divide that out, let's say on a homework assignment you got 102 points out of 120. When we divide it, you would get that decimal of 0.85 and then move that decimal twice. So I know that it would indeed be 85%. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next one. Alrighty, so on this one, I've just again rewritten that proportion just so that we can see it, but no need for you to do that. 9 is, I know that it's is over of, and it's always part over whole. So 9 is, therefore that is going to be our part. 30% is of VR percent, and then the last one, of what number? So I'm trying to find what that whole is. All right, so let's go ahead and I want you to set up this proportion, solve it out, get an answer, and then push play when you think that you are completed with just this question. Alrighty, so hopefully we set it up as 9 over x equals 30 over 100. But again, remember, because a proportion is a commutative, I could also have written that as 30 over 100 equals 9 over x. Then again, we know that just from last chapter also that we could have had a totally different setup altogether and putting the numerators up down into the denominators and vice versa. But again, to keep it so that it's kind of uniform, we just keep that same part over whole equals the percent over 100 in order for clarification purposes. So hopefully we ended up with x equals 30. All right, and then on this very last question, I want you to completely solve it out and then push play when you have your proportion and your final answer. All right, so notice up in the top, I identified 15 as the part because it says 15 is, and then what percent, so that's what I'm missing, so I used x, and then of 75, meaning 75 is the whole. So 15 over 75 equals x over 100. And I end up with getting x equals 20. And then remember, again, just like before on that first question that I said we can always double check our answer. So if I were to take my original fraction 15 over 75, if I were to divide it out, I should end up with that indeed 20%. All right, so this was the end of 6-1 notes. Hopefully we feel pretty good about this, and good luck on your problems.